Difficult to find things to criticize about this women's national team after the group stage. 3 wins, 9 goals forward, 0 conceded. But Coach Bev Priestman has hammered down that this team needs to be more clinical and finish the chances they're given if they want to win this tournament. Would you agree with her assessment?
I think so. And that just comes with the territory of being the Olympic champions and needing to criticize something because you're always looking for improvement. And yes, the clean sheet through 3 matches is very impressive. That is 270 plus minutes, closer to 300 with some of the cooling breaks and everything we've had. But they've not only have they not conceded, they've not allowed any opposition to get their offense going. That's a double-edged sword because eventually that's going to change. And that's been the case in CONCACAF, especially on the women's side, for many years, where you will thump the opposition and then you'll meet the Americans, and that's your tournament. And while that parity is increasing, that gap is shrinking. That's still the case. So Bev wants them to be clinical, to use her word, and she's right, because yes, they beat Costa Rica and Panama by close margins. It should have been a lot more than that, 4 or 5-0. And when you get to the final, if you get through Jamaica, and we can talk about Jamaica, I'm sure we will talk about Jamaica, but when you get to the final, assuming everything goes to chalk, the Americans aren't going to give you that many opportunities, and you're going to be defending a lot more against a powerhouse like they are. So yes, they need to be more clinical. But having said that, I'd say it's been 90% very successful from Les Rouges so far. And now the tournament's on. They're guaranteed to have 2 more games. And these are the matches that really matter from here on out.
There's some talk before the tournament about this team's reliance on Christine Sinclair, but we've seen goals come from everywhere. How much of a privilege is it for this team to be able to bring Julia Grosso, Jordan Heitman off the bench every game?
Yeah, and for Bev's case in the last match to not even bring in the Golden Boot leader, it is a good position to be in. She mentioned to us that this wasn't necessarily the plan to have no minutes for Julia, but she saw an opportunity as the match progressed to get her some rest and keep her sharp for the matches that really do matter. The goal scoring will always be a question until they start scoring consistently against the more tough opposition, especially when they leave CONCACAF and go to the World Cups and go to the Olympics. That's when you need them to be confident and free flowing and fluid, which are a lot of the key tones that she's striking in the pre and post match press conferences. I don't think anyone expected the midfield to be leading Canada in goals through 3 matches. And yes, you can hope for a little bit more from the forwards, but what it is doing is it's forcing oppositions to increase their scout from just how do we try and slow down Christine Sinclair to, okay, well, all of a sudden we need to pay attention to the midfield. And Sophie Schmidt coming off the bench and scoring her 20th goal in well over 200 caps is just another layer of competence that Bev can insert to this 11. But yes, the goal scoring will remain in question until we start seeing the Beckys when she's up there, Prince, Rose, Leon, whoever's playing Heidema. Until they start scoring consistently, that question is still going to be asked inherently.
Talked a bit about Schmidt there. She's now the 3rd Canadian woman to score in 3 different decades. I believe you called it a vintage Sophie Schmidt finish. Just speak to her longevity in this program.
Yeah, look, this program has always given a lot of tenure to the players that earn it. And it's one of the reasons why if you came in with a cavalier manager that might say, okay, well, maybe we can just really trust the kids. We're not getting our goals from the players who've been here for a while. Let's just let the young players really go and have a turn. And that's not necessarily how Canada Soccer has ever done it, especially with the women's national team, because the players, even when they're getting towards the ends of their career, they're still often the hardest workers in training. They're still the ones that understand the system, match in and match out. And a lot of that comes on them. You don't get to be in a position like Sinclair, like Schmidt, like Scott. We're almost at the case where we can put some of that middle tier into the aging group, but they keep themselves fit, they keep themselves sharp, and they're also performing regularly domestically, whether that's in the NWSL, whether that's overseas. They're getting the minutes, they're getting their opportunities there. It's just when they come to Canada, it's a bit of a different system because Bev is trying to figure out how do we find that balance. But what Sophie Schmidt reminded us all is that she still got it in the locker and there's still some matches left in those legs. I don't know that she's going to see 300 like Sink did, but I think she's good for a couple more years. I'd be shocked if we don't see at least one of Scott and Schmidt next year when the World Cup rolls around, all depending on health and form, of course.
We've talked about how goals are coming from a variety of sources. Is there anyone that wasn't in the lineup last game that you think should be locked in for the game against Jamaica?
Grosso's the easiest one, but it depends on how Bev sees the way she wants to deploy them. They've been very intentional in how they talk about their starters and not their subs, but their finishers, because they really do think that that is a strength of the team. It may not always lead to the most exciting brand of football, but it's brilliant, especially when you're playing in Mexico. It was over 40 degrees. Canada will have the later game, so it won't be quite as hot on Thursday, but it is interesting because if teams are going to shift mentality into a low block and just sit and defend for their lives, I remember in the pre-match, as we led up to Costa Rica, we were hearing from, whether it was Bev, some of the players, like, yeah, we expect them to be sort of this free-flowing 4-3-3, getting forward a lot, and Canada just completely nullified that. So what it means is that the opposition then needs to sit back, and it's just defending for 90 plus minutes when it's over 40 degrees. All of a sudden, you can look to the bench and say, okay, Dree, okay, Jordan, okay, whoever, whether it's Grosso coming in as a finisher, go run them. They're exhausted. That's sort of one of the big strengths of this team right now is they know that they have their depth. And if they can get an early lead against a side like Jamaica, even better. What you would love to see is Fleming scores in the 5th minute. You're thinking, okay, this could be a high goal scoring kind of game. And then Costa Rica sort of saw that warning shot, knew they couldn't concede again if they wanted any chance. And they really muddied the waters from there. So the first goal is important for Canada. An early goal is important, but they can't let a team like Jamaica hang around. This isn't the same Jamaica that it was when Canada's beating them 9-0, 11-0, 9-0 again. And the goal scoring differential with Jamaica too is the same pretty much as the first 3 teams that Canada has played. But this is a very different team. And the technical director with Jamaica right now has taken them in a new direction where they're a bit younger, a bit more lethal. They can find their goals, and they have Bunny Shaw on the team. So that's going to be something to watch out for too. But I think Priestman has to love where she's at. It's tough because you can only judge what you see, and you can only play the opposition that you have to play until you get to these final moments. So I'd say Canada is on one hand okay. And I've been not guilty of it, but I've been very honest in my assessments at times where I think Canada have not played to their best, but they've done more than enough to get into a good position. And now it's 2 matches and they're back at the Olympics.
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about how Canada has been great, but we could be better. This seems like a game where that might get them by, but do you also think they want to use this game as a stepping stone because there's going to be no room for error against the United States? How do you think Jamaica lines up as well? Do you think we see them kind of show us that respect that Costa Rica did and line up in a back 5, or do you see them lining up another way?
No, I'd expect we'll still see them in their 4-3-3, at least to start. I think at this point, you look at the Jamaican side and they're strong defensively, but that's not their calling card. They can't really just sit everybody back and then hope that Khadija Shah can just run through the Canadian backline. They've got speed on the wings. I would expect them to be hungry out the gates. That's when they're going to be at their most fresh. That's when they're going to be at the most sharp. Maybe Canada has a slow start. Certainly the supporters and the media hopes that that's not the case. But I think Jamaica is going to understand the importance that if you're going to play a war of attrition with Canada, it's a dangerous game. And look, this is also a side that is playing very inspired after the tragic loss of one of their youth national team players. They're playing for a purpose. They're again representing the Caribbean as they've punched their ticket again. They were the first Caribbean team to make it to a World Cup. Now they've done it again. So they're the second team to do it too. They feel an enormous amount of pride. And Bunny in the post game after they qualified even said, we're a small country with big hearts and big ambitions. And I think we're going to see that same sort of belief and confidence. And if they can get an early one on Sheridan, you have to remember I think she's made 2 saves through 2 matches because that's how dominant Canada's been defensively. Of course, she's training hard and she's a good goalkeeper, but you never know if you get a fast goal, how that would change things for Jamaica. Then they might park the bus if they get an early one. But you got to remember too, there's extra time in this. There's potentially penalty kicks if it goes the distance. So managing both sides is going to be really important for both Bev and for Jamaica.
Regardless of the way things end up, it's going to be a great match. Thank you so much for coming on, Adam, and we'll see you tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. OneSoccer and CBC.
Yeah, thank you very much. Go Reds.